It is me, Andy Lockwood, and this is an episode of College Talk Tuesday. Normally, I am joined by my bride business partner, Pearl. She is too busy working on a whole lot of stuff when he's gone, but he's definitely a little higher on the pain in the butt factor than I would like. Anyway, so what I want to talk to you today about on this episode of College Talk Tuesday are three of the biggest myths about financial aid and scholarships. And this is sort of an excerpted or sneak preview version of the webinar that I am doing tomorrow night with Pearl, Wednesday night, on the seven biggest financial aid and scholarship myths. And you can sign up for that webinar right here on this page. There's a link, cs4l.tv, the College Success for Less show. Okay, myth number one, far and away, biggest myth is that six-figure earning families or upper middle class, or as I like to call them, forgotten middle class families just can't possibly qualify for anything. The reason that is a myth is that most aid goes to families in the top 25% of earnings. Colleges increasingly are discounting families who make six-figure incomes more and more. They're bribing them for a variety of reasons, including, frankly, they need the money. Well, especially state colleges, they've had their money taken away from them, their funding taken away from them by their state governments very, slowly and steadily over the last probably 10 years at this point. And they're looking for high-paying families, both domestically from other states and internationally, which is probably going to be a little bit harder given the current administration, not to be political. They're looking for higher paying students to come. It's much better or easier, and again, this is also not political, but I'm just call them like I see them. It's much better for colleges to give a small discount, $10,000 to $15,000, for example, to a family that can come up with the rest either from their own funds or borrowing, versus maybe do that for four families versus a $40,000 or $60,000 gift or grant or scholarship to a low-income family. And there's a number of reasons why it's better, but the main one is the money. They'd rather get more money from more people. So that is why, and whether it's need-based aid or increasingly merit-based aid, it's actually more merit-based aid. Merit means anything that's not considered need-based. So all that need-based means is that you fill out the forms, and the two main forms, this is a gross oversimplification, but the two main forms are the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, and the CSS profile, which is used by 260, 270 colleges in addition to, not in lieu of, but in addition to the FAFSA. And once you fill those out, then your eligibility for need-based aid is what gets determined by each college. Anything that is given out that has nothing to do with those forms, which could be for your grades, could be for your volunteer hours, it could be for being a talented musician or an athlete, who knows, anything that's not based on your financial aid forms is called non-need-based or loosely merit-based. So that's the difference. So merit-based aid is not only for super genius kids who have perfect ACT and SAT scores and 6.0 averages on a scale of 4.0 and cured a deadly disease in a third world country and cancer and all this other stuff. Merit is in the eye of the beholder. So rule of thumb-wise, if you are applying to a list of colleges, the ones that covet you the most, meaning the ones where you're probably in the top 25% of incoming freshmen in terms of, at least in terms of grades and scores, you can look at last year's stats and figure out where you fall. That is a school that is more likely to give you money, whether it's need-based or non-need-based. That's just the way it is. There are often blurry lines. Okay, so that's myth number one. Even if you make a high salary on paper, then you shouldn't rule yourself out. So absolutely 100% is a myth that six-figure earning families don't get money, because they do. Okay, myth number two, colleges are on your side. They're going to help you. So the reason people think that colleges will help them through the process is because of all the flourishy type of rhetoric on colleges' websites about how much money they give out. And some colleges even offer to help you complete the financial aid forms. Fordham, I remember, did that, I don't know if it was last year, but for several years. But here's the deal. Colleges are businesses. You may not have realized this, but it's kind of obvious when you think about it. They have, even though they're nonprofit, which is the biggest joke in America, they have their own expenses. They have a whole lot of their own overhead to pay for. They've got all these amenities like rock climbing walls and lazy rivers and super high-tech workout facilities, dining facilities, vegan, gluten-free, all sorts of options, as well as staggering amount of payroll. It's not just professors they're paying. They have all kinds of administrative people. So presidents who earn seven-figure salaries or deep six-figure salaries. You've got chief marketing officers. You've got weird titles that even I can't figure out exactly what they do. Credential specialist or something. So these all add up to college's overhead, and that's why they need to get more money from you in order to make a profit. So that's why they don't make it so easy for you to figure out on their websites when their forms are due. Pearl was telling me last week she was doing student loans for a client of ours who's going to grad school, and she couldn't figure out how much the school actually cost. There wasn't a number given on the screen. There were not even frequently asked questions. So you may have to click around 15 or 20 times, and only then may you find out, number one, what forms are required to file. Number two, when the deadlines are. That's a big problem. A lot of people miss deadlines because they don't know. Not only do they not know what forms to require, but when they're due to file, but when they're due. So colleges, because they don't want to dole out as much money as you might otherwise deserve, because they have to, kind of parcel out their resources. They don't make it easy for you. So don't think that they are on your side. And frequently colleges will lowball you when they give you a financial aid offer. A lot of times, not every time, those offers can be improved after negotiating. I just had a really awful experience yesterday, leading up till yesterday, when a client of mine from American University, I'll call them out, should have gotten $20,000 to $25,000 worth of financial aid, and ultimately they got zero. And this was for a kid who was returning to American after the first year, when they had we went through the same thing last year, and the message was, okay, last year we can't really do anything, our hands are tied because your income is too artificially high in our formulas, but next year you should apply and things will work out. Well, this year they got a bad offer. They were told to appeal, so we went through the appeal process, and then a few weeks later, after getting the appeal, they said, oh, we don't have the budget. So we were like, well, why did we have to appeal in the first place? My point is that I'm not saying American is categorically bad. I'm just saying that in general, colleges are businesses, and even though they may, if you look at American University's website, you see all these, all these crazy, highfalutin promises about how much money they give away, some of which we tried to throw back in their faces in a nice way when we wrote the appeal letter, but we still got zilch. So don't think that colleges are on your side. You alone have to do whatever it takes to protect yourself. You have to, your agenda may not overlap, probably will not actually overlap with any of the colleges on your list. Okay, and the last myth, the third one, and again, this is a sneak preview if you're just joining us. I have a webinar coming up tomorrow night with Pearl, 7 p.m. Eastern. You can register right here via the link that's on this page, where we're going to be covering 7 myths. This is the third out of 7, and a whole lot more actually, and live Q&A. The seventh myth, the third myth, is that this process is pretty straightforward and easy, because if you were to, if you were to look at the FAFSA website, that's the main financial aid form, or you were to talk to a guidance counselor or something, you might think that it's, you just fill out some numbers, pull them from your tax return, and you file it, and then you get what you get. For some people, that could be true, so I'm not saying this is a complete 100% myth, but for many people, there are nuances, meaning there are some deadly landmines and some mistakes that they can commit. And I already talked about missing deadlines. That's a big mistake. Not knowing what forms to fill out, that's another mistake. But over-including savings or different types of assets, that should not be included. You have to be very careful when you read the directions of the FAFSA, which most normal people have no interest in doing. And buried in the fine print, they'll tell you this is what you should include, but this is what's not included in the question that pertains to the value of your investments. If you're self-employed, there is a huge landmine, a big mistake that's lurking there that could cost you thousands of dollars, as well as potentially some opportunities. All I can tell you is that out of 108 questions, or whatever the FAFSA is, it may appear relatively straightforward, but there are 1,100 pages of regulations that were promulgated by the Department of Education that pertain to the FAFSA. So if it were really that easy a form, then why do we need all these regulations? And frankly, in our practice, we have a lot of people who are really, really good with paperwork who kind of have thrown their hands up in the air and said, you know what, Pearl, you handle the forms for us. And these are people who are very smart and good with paperwork and numbers. Like, we have a lot of CPAs as clients, we have a lot of lawyers, we have, you name it, you get the point. So the process can be straightforward, but if you make one mistake, sometimes that little innocuous mistake can make the difference between getting everything you need in order to be able to comfortably afford to send your kid to their dream school that they work so hard to get into, versus an opposite result where you can't get the money that you need. Then you have to let your kid down, or you've got to borrow up to the eyeballs or something. So that's why these even little teeny tiny mistakes can take on much larger significance. All right, so I am wrapping up this edition of College Talk Tuesday. I hope you get a chance to join us tomorrow night. I'm not planning a replay. We're actually using a new technology that I haven't quite figured out. I've done a couple of dry runs, but I'm a little nervous about being able to pull it off. But it's tomorrow night. You can register right here at www.cs4l.tv, which stands for College Success for Less, which is sort of what we're all about here. Thanks a lot for watching. Please share this. Please, if you have a question about anything that I said, pop them in comments here. I will be checking them sometime before tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you the next edition of College Coffee Talk, which I do in the mornings, usually around 8:30, 9 o'clock, with a cup of joe. All right, Andy Lockwood saying bye. Talk to you later.